Thank you so much. A big shout out to the Psychology Club for agreeing to host this and for supporting this and everything, and thank you to the Tech Ops for all of your hard work. So today I'd like to start by talking about discomfort. Discomfort is something that I have been reflective upon in my life, and I've learned a lot from, and I've done hours upon hours of research. And today I'll be talking about the benefits of discomfort, how you can seek discomfort yourselves, and some tips for doing so. So, just starting out right now, I'd like to tell a little story about myself. In the 7th grade, I decided to do what's called poetry out loud. For those who don't know, it's where you have to memorize a poem and then recite it in front of a bunch of people. And so I memorized my poem so much that I knew every single word, except I didn't know anything about tone or inflection because I was in 7th grade. And so then the time came for me to present my poem. And so I get up on this giant stage, and there's just me and a spotlight. And I see the shadows of my friends, my teachers and their parents and students' parents. And then my mind goes blank. I forget everything, and I had to be cued in for every single line. It was incredibly embarrassing. I thought, I cannot show my face in the school ever again. I have to leave, I have to transfer, my life is over. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. And that's not actually me, but that's what I looked like when I freaked out. But last time I checked, I am still here 10 years later, and I just did a little solo trip to Finland, and I was feeding some reindeers. And so, how did I get here? I didn't let that moment of the poetry out loud define me. Instead, I continued leaning into public speaking positions where I gave terrible class presentations. I whiffed my class officer election speech, and I did not get elected. And I also messed up the morning announcements for my high school more times than I'd care to admit. But in those instances were a lot of growth and learning from the uncomfortability of putting myself out there. And so throughout that reflection period and from the research, I've kind of boiled down the benefits into 3 main categories. One, how it can increase our capacity. It can help us identify who we are and change how we see the world. And let's just say I didn't start by running a triathlon in Antarctica. I started with a stage in 7th grade, but the principle is still the same. When we do things that scare us, that challenge us, that push us, we grow from it. A little acronym to help you remember is SIP, Capacity, Identity, Perspective. You know how we take it one step at a time? We could also take it one sip at a time. So capacity is about what you can do, and this often grows through challenges that we overcome. Challenges that we have never done before and that we push ourselves to accomplish. The easiest way to think about it is when we go to the gym, right? We lift weights and we put stress and strain on our muscles, and eventually we're able to do more repetitions and lift heavier weights, right? So when we put ourselves in these uncomfortable positions, it allows us to do more. And this goes for a variety of different disciplines as well: psychology, emotions, pretty much everything except for stress on breaking a bone and bridges falling. Yeah. An amazing example of this is Anders Hoffman. Anders Hoffman was a marketing consultant. He was not a professional athlete at all. And he wanted to go out and show that limitations are perceptions. And he is the first and only person to complete an Ironman in Antarctica. For those who don't know, an Ironman is a long-distance triathlon where you have to swim 3.8 kilometers or 2.4 miles. You bike in snow and ice in 112 miles, and then he also, just to top it off, ran a marathon. So that's insane. Along his journey, he was told several times that it was impossible, he would never be able to do it by professionals and athletes alike. Yet, he was consistent with his training, and he knew that it was going to be terrible, and he was going to be sluggish, and he was going to be tired. But in the end, he grew much beyond the discomfort itself, and he proved to the world that when we put our minds to the tests that we do, that It's just our perceptions that are holding us back, and that we can grow from them. The documentary of this is on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out if you want some inspiration in your life. This also goes for educational psychology. And so if you think about how we learned math, right? We start with some adding, and then we start with some multiplying, and then we eventually are able to do calculus and prob and stats because we have to graduate college. And so a researcher named Robert York researched what's called desirable difficulties. These are tasks that require a considerable but desirable amount of effort. And so what he found is that, yeah, short-term progress kind of was stifled a little bit. Maybe we didn't do as well, but the long-term advantages were far greater. So he found that when people are tackling harder problems, when they're changing conditions, and incorporating a moderate amount of discomfort, that we're better equipped to navigate future challenges. And this goes for all challenges, not just some challenges. So in other words, the right discomfort doesn't just prepare you for one challenge, it prepares you for all challenges. And so if discomfort can grow what we can do, it can also reveal more about ourselves, whether that is embarrassing myself on stage in 7th grade, or the act of trying to be bored and sit still with my thoughts and not doom scroll. I'm sure most of us can relate to that, right? We can raise our hands if you always want to doom scroll instead of just sit on a train or just wait in line. So I like to tell a little story about myself, a second story, because I'm just so hospitable. Thank you. It was a terrible joke. So 4 years ago, 2021 to 22, was my first year at ETEM. I was involved in over 10 clubs. I was overloading. I was pushing myself. I recently went back and looked at the hours I was in class, doing activities, and studying. And that accumulated to roughly 80 hours a week. The reason why I was like this was because I was constantly running from my own thoughts. I did not want to sit with my own thoughts. Whenever there was a moment of silence, it was myself beating me up, where I told myself, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy of life, you're terrible, you're lazy, you're this, you're that. And so the most terrible things that you can think about saying to someone is what I was saying to myself, and that's why I was so busy. That forced me to take a leave of absence after my first year and work on these thoughts. I'll put a pin in the story, we'll come back to it. However, research shows that we're not alone in this phenomenon. They did a study where they asked people to sit in a room by themselves for 15 minutes. And so that seems simple, right? We can probably all sit in a room for 15 minutes, right? However, they then put a button in there and they said, it's gonna shock you if you push this button. Now sit here for 15 minutes. And so then what happened, what they found, interestingly, is that most people pressed the button, just shocked themselves. They wanted to inflict pain rather than sit and be bored for 15 minutes. And when they hit the button, they didn't hit it just once, they hit it multiple times. So I'll just say that again. People would rather shock themselves than sit with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. But when we are able to sit with that discomfort and unravel those thoughts, research shows that we can increase clarity, creativity, and a stronger sense of self. And so coming back to the story, after my first year at E-Town and on my leave of absence, I had to work on managing those thoughts for myself. It was extremely hard, and I leaned on my therapist, my friends, and all of my supports. And I remember being in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, saying, I love you to myself, and crying, like, a lot, through a whole box of tissues, because it was something so profound that I knew I was treating myself as my worst enemy when I could be treating myself as my best friend. I'm not my best friend yet, I'm a good friend, but not my best friend. And so, even though that moment was extremely uncomfortable and probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, and I still practice it till today, it was imperative for me to be with my own thoughts and sit in that uncomfortability, because it shaped who I am today, and it shaped how I view myself. And so that discomfort of being by myself was a doorway for my mind to start liking itself. Another example I'd like to present to you for how discomfort can help change us, and especially our worldview, is Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a psychiatrist who was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. And in it, he lost his mother, his brother, and his pregnant wife. He had unimaginable suffering. But he found that the people who were most likely to survive the Holocaust were not the strongest ones. In fact, they're the ones who helped others, envisioned a future that was better and more positive, and especially those who honored the loved ones either outside of the concentration camps or those who had passed, and carrying their memories and their values with them. In his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And this is the essence of post-traumatic growth, where adversity, while it's deeply painful, can lead to a deeper appreciation of life, stronger relationships, and clearer priorities. Now, I want to say that trauma is a hard thing to go through. I'm not saying that we should all go looking for trauma, right? It's hard to go through. Some people don't even find benefits, and some are just atrocious to go through. It's very hard. But I would be ignorant to say that there are no benefits that could come from trauma. Some research shows some people do find positive meaning. And again, even though it's really hard to go through, there can be this beautiful growth that comes from it. And so Frankl then went on after the Holocaust to talk about post-traumatic growth and how we can frame these terrible situations in a more positive light. And so even though his discomfort was not chosen, it did transform his perspective, and ours consequently. It invites the question that if such meaning can come from tragedy, what could we gain from a smaller discomfort we can choose? So whether that's experiencing a new culture, going to Finland and feeding some reindeers, or joining a new club like line dancing, or doing something else, right? Having a hard conversation with a friend and really trying to understand the perspective. There's much more that we can learn from each other and appreciate the diversity of thoughts and how we show up in the world. So again, discomfort opens the way for a new way of living and understanding life in a way that you would never have been able to understand by yourself. And so now you're thinking, okay, here's all the benefits, right? And just to summarize the SIP acronym for you, discomfort can help by building our capacity, shaping our identity, and expanding our perspectives. And so you're like, okay, cool, now what? There is an underlying mechanism with all three of these things that help explain how we are able to overcome our discomforts. And this is in part due to our relationships. Discomfort does not just grow you, but it grows us together as a whole. If you think about the stories that I just shared, Anders Hoffman relied on his friends, his community, the sponsorship of Yes Theory to be able to do this Ironman, this Project Iceman is what he calls it. For me, I leaned on my friends and my mentors and my therapist a lot, and I still do, to get me through the challenge of balancing myself. And Frankl relied on his loved ones, and he honored those to help him continue his life. And so, if you think about it, some of the people that you're also closest to are the ones that you've kind of gone through something with, right? Research on vulnerability shows that risking embarrassment, rejection, or awkward honesty opens the door to trust. From being a frontline employee to trying to survive the end of a semester or training for a race together, that discomfort of going through something together bonds people more than comfort ever could. In fact, two of the biggest factors that determine how much stress we can handle are our mindset and our social supports. And these are very nuanced topics that could have entire presentations on its own, but I'll simplify it for you. So how we frame challenges and who we have supporting us are both just as important. But seeking discomfort at all costs is a mistake. Not all discomfort is good discomfort. Overworking yourself to exhaustion is not resiliency, it's burnout. Similarly, running from a bear is not a growth opportunity, it is called survival. Next, a quote that my therapist has given to me is growth equals stress plus rest. So if you don't have enough stress, we stagnate and we become bored and we want to rip our hair out, right? But if we are too stressed, then we run the risk of breaking ourselves. And so productive discomfort is intentional, meaningful, and balanced, while destructive discomfort ignores context, overreaches, and denies recovery. So to summarize that, before you seek discomfort, I want you to check the context. Is it safe and meaningful, right? Are you in front of some peers versus the entire world? Are you writing an essay versus running from a bear? Then I want you to reframe the mindset. Instead of thinking, I'm anxious, I'm scared, you can acknowledge those feelings, right? You can say, yes, I'm scared, and put a little bit of improv in there, right? Yes, I'm scared, and this is exciting. This is an opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn from these mistakes, and for me to instill education in other people. Lastly, ensure the dosage and the rest is right. So remember to push, but also make time for yourself to recover. A little side note on recovery, there is active rest and there is passive rest. Active rest is where you're kind of engaging in your activities, such as reading, hanging out with friends, whatever, versus passive rest, that's where you're a couch potato. Putting on the show, can't do it, just let your brain go numb. So rest does involve those two things. And now you're thinking, okay, cool, now I know how stress helps and what to do before going into discomfort, but what do I do to actually do it and what I'm actually engaging in discomfort? Luckily, I have some tips for you. First, start small. Pick something that's right outside your comfort zone, something that scares you a bit, but won't put you into a panic mode. Next, reframe the feeling. Instead of thinking I'm anxious, think I'm growing, think I'm challenging myself, right? And then visualize success. Instead of asking, how could this go wrong, or thinking about all the ways that things could go wrong, think about, what if it went right? There's a word for thinking about how everything can go wrong, catastrophizing. And recently I did some research and I could not find a word for thinking about all the ways that things could go right. There's optimism, but that's an undying belief that the future is better. But there's not a word, that means looking at all the ways that something could go right. Visualize what success means for you. What does it mean to just at least get across the finish line? Are you alive? Perfect. Okay, I think you'll survive your discomfort, right? Next is breathe and be present. Again, a lot of research has shown, and the literature agrees on this, when you take deep breaths, it does calm your nervous system, and you may be thinking BS, because I deep breathe and I'm still anxious, and I will agree with you. This morning, last night, I was practicing some deep breathing before this, and I was still anxious, but anxious less so. I was able to kind of calm my thoughts and investigate them more carefully. Lastly, rest and reflect. After these experiences of discomfort, where you push yourself, make sure you're reflecting on the experience, seeing who you were before, seeing who you were after, and really getting a lot of information from them. A quote that I'd like to discuss that I believe encapsulates this presentation is, again, from our friend Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and a response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose a response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's how I got to speaking in front of all of you today, from that 7th grade stage. I continuously sought out experiences where I would be put in situations where I'd have to challenge myself and continuously learn and continuously to do better. I wanted to prove to myself that public speaking wasn't a fear and something that I could conquer. And so by continuously failing, I proved that limitations are perceptions. So go out and seek discomfort, because on the other side of the right discomfort is more than a challenge to overcome. It's a greater capacity, a stronger sense of identity, a richer perspective, not just for you, but for everyone's life you will touch. Because the right discomfort does not make life just better or even harder. It makes life worthwhile. Thank you. All right, and we have time for questions. I know there's probably lots of questions about how you can apply this in your own life and everything. I just wanted to give, as we're waiting for questions, we're going to be passing out some papers that just kind of recaps the entire presentation. So you can take it home with you, you can look at it, and on the back side there's just a bunch of quotes that I've come across that you could also reflect on and think about as well. So, any questions from anyone? Yes, Marissa.
What is one piece of advice that you would like leave us with while like in this semester and like having stress, like the one piece that you would like?
One piece of advice that I have for you for the end of the semester?
Yeah, like just like biggest takeaway. Yeah.
Well, considering we're in week 12, right? It's pretty hard to, do the semester over again, so you only have 3 weeks. So I would say to just accept where you are right now and focus on what you can change going forward. If you need extensions on papers, ask for extensions on papers before the day of. Again, allow yourself time to rest. Know that this is a period of stress, but you will rest after the semester, right? So these next 3 weeks are going to be hectic. There's going to be a lot of stress. But then, come December 13th or 14th or something like that, that's when we can take a breath. So accept the stress for the next 3 weeks and just do your best. There was a lot of rhyming in there, and I'm not a rhymer. Okay. Nate.
As someone who understands discomfort and has gone through it like yourself, do you find yourself, or would you recommend someone, like, where's the line of when you see an opportunity that brings you discomfort, when do you stop taking that opportunity? Like when there's multiple opportunities that keep coming up to you, do you take every opportunity you can, or do you kind of choose which ones, and how do you choose which ones?
So the question, just to make sure I heard you correctly, is when there's a bunch of opportunities and there's a bunch of things that I could choose from to help me seeking discomfort, how do I know which one to choose?
Or like when they keep coming up.
Or when they keep coming up.
The next one, how do you?
Yeah, that's something I'm still I'm learning, I'm always learning, but still working through. So for me, the easiest way that I've learned to say no to something is if I have a reason to say yes. So, many things are gonna come up, but for me, it's like really prioritizing what is more aligned with me, what I wanna do, if I have to give something up, right, how do I give it up in an appropriate manner that's not letting other people down, and how do I wait from, or not take on too much. And so, my first year, I always said yes. I was like, yeah, I'll try. And then I'm sure some of you guys will know, many of you have tried to have me come to your events or do your clubs or whatever, and I've said no to you guys many times. But it's because I'm saying yes to myself, yes to my time, yes to the friends that I'm already spending time with, to my assignments, and so that's how I view it. And so learning which one to choose, that's really a matter of which one is more aligned with your values, what's more beneficial now, long term. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Kate.
How do you balance active and passive rest, like without predominantly falling into passive rest, like when you're tired?
Yes.
And constantly, how do you feel like you take advantage of passive rest without feeling lazy?
Yeah, so how do you balance active and passive rest, and then how do you also engage in rest so that you don't feel lazy? Yeah, it's a very personal, unique thing, right? The idea of rest and how much rest you should have. I personally believe, like over an hour of TikTok a day is probably not the best. But, I know most of us are probably on TikTok and Instagram over 3 hours, let's be real. But knowing the difference between the two, it's like, what is restoring your energy? What is actually restoring your energy? Are you doom scrolling because you're running away from something? Or are you doing this TV because you're running away from something? Or do you want to engage? If you've had 5-6 days in a row where you're doing academic stuff, you're doing clubs, whatever you're on, one day to just chill and watch Stranger Things before, season 5 comes out, that's okay. We're not perfect, and we shouldn't always strive for hyperproductivity. But knowing the difference between active and passive rest, again, it's very nuanced and it's very individual. I wish I could just tell you, but it's, for me, I incorporate a lot of active rest. Right now I'm in a period of pretty much no passive rest. But I try to, take my nights slowly before I'm going to bed, my mornings slowly if I don't have something in the morning. I hope that helps. Yeah, okay. Any other questions on anything? Don't be scared. Yeah, Alex.
So, do you seek out activities that actively bring discomfort, or are you more just, like you described, things coming to you and you say yes, yes, yes?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that you talk about that you do that I don't even see the path there. How do you find those activities that you're seeking out, I guess?
So the question is essentially how do I find the activities that I'm seeking out and seeking discomfort? Essentially for this, right, this is kind of stemmed from that 7th grade poetry out loud. Ever since then, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be terrible at public speaking. And so I kept kind of creating opportunities, finding ways and being creative of my environment. Sometimes I just get curious itches, or just itches of I want to go out and just talk to strangers. And so, as you guys saw, there's the cards on your tables that you guys could ask each other before coming in or afterwards. And so I had this itch of speaking to a stranger in a different country and just talking to them about their experiences. And so I took those cards and I found a stranger over in the Prague trip that we do, and I had a whole 10-minute conversation with them. And so it can be very kind of just spontaneous and not non-committal. Other things like line dancing, for example, I just kind of put myself out there and I was like, you know what, this is what makes me happy. I said yes because I was visiting my sister, but and then I fell in love with it. But finding ways to bring it into my life. So if I am what's something that I haven't really explored or haven't tried? If there's an opportunity that I don't have to commit long-term to, then I'll try to do it. When I have to commit long-term time, week after week, that's where for me it gets iffy, because I don't want to tie myself down to something. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah? Okay. I don't have the time. But what
33.
We're cruising. Okay. Other questions or anything? On anything? Yes.
How was your process for creating or thinking about this song? Because I definitely noticed it has a lot of personal insight, and I love that. So when did you come up with it?
So the question was, how did I come up with the idea of everything, of this presentation? So really, this has been in the works in my mind. I've been kind of thinking about it for around 2 years, 2-3 years. Didn't know it was exactly going to be like this. Didn't know that those were going to be the topics, the SIP, capacity, identity, perspective. But I allowed myself time to kind of ruminate, think about the experiences. When I engage in videos and learning, I kind of looked at discomfort and how people were growing from that. And then when I did my own research, I kind of was just, taking away what they were saying, how people are growing. And then I really wanted to summarize it into 3 ways. I really wanted to shorten it so that it's impactful for all of you. You guys can remember it. And then SIP came up. I messed around with different variations of 3 things. But then I felt like this was good because it talks more about what you can do, and then yourself and the broader world. And so when last year I had a presentation with Human Connections, And so that one was a lot of, experiences that then I would do research to confirm or deny or adjust. And so, but it was only in those periods of resting and reflecting that I kind of thought through this. Does that answer your question? Okay. Other questions? Yes.
So you talked about how our mind never really shuts off and you can just continue to think and think and think. Do you have any techniques on like how to like ease your mind but like not burn yourself out by like joining 10 different clubs and stuff like that?
So essentially like, for people whose minds constantly are going and going, how do you calm it down? Now, a clarifying question. Do you mean just like in the sense of wanting to take a rest or learning to sit by yourself?
Learning to sit by yourself.
Learning to sit by yourself, yes. Yeah, that, good luck. It was, again, when I say it was the hardest thing that I've ever done, I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life. And that one by far, it's still one that I'm practicing. How do I do it? Well, I mean, I started with knowing that my therapist at the time, he was like, you are treating yourself as your worst enemy. And I was like, yeah, because I am. And then he was like, no, you can also be your best friend. And I was like, what? And so then I started treating myself with the kindness and the respect that I give other people. And so I would just look at the thoughts that would come up. And if I would say it to someone else, okay, cool. If I would not say it to someone else, right? If you would never say it to your best friend, to the enemy, or to your worst enemy, right? Then say, why am I saying this to myself? And really try to examine those thoughts. Again, incredibly difficult, especially when you look at yourself in the mirror and you start trying to give yourself self-compassion and speaking out loud. Another tip that I used was saying my name in the third person. So instead of saying, oh, I have to do this, or I have to do that, or oh, I'm so this, saying my name, Tynan. Oh, okay, Tynan, it's okay, you didn't do this exam, but you're going to make it up in the future. Oh, Tynan, you didn't get out of bed until noon, but that doesn't affect the rest of your day. You'll be okay. You're still worth, all the love that you give to other people. And so it was difficult, but it started small and I just continued at it. And again, no great change happens overnight. It's always the small steps. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ellie.
Do you meditate? I feel like you would.
Do I meditate? I yes and no. I went through periods of where I do meditate, and when I'm walking from class to class, I'll try to not have earbuds in, and I'll just try to listen to the leaves and try to listen to the nature around me to kind of ground myself in between classes. Because again, as most of you know, sometimes I'm going from point A to point B, absolutely sprinting. And then, again, I don't do proper, when I say proper meditation, formal meditation, but I do deep breaths, and then I do some, I just kind of scan my body, feeling where my stress is located and where the tension is. That's what I do, yeah. Any other questions for personal curiosity, how you can do stuff in your own life? Okay, I don't see any more hands. Thank you so much for coming. If you want to seek some more discomfort, there is some line dancing tonight at 7 p.m. In the J Lounge. So if there are no other questions, last call. It's okay if you do have questions. It's okay, no one's gonna hate you because these have been great questions. Thank you very much. Okay, one more round of applause for Tech Ops and Psychology Club. Thank you so much. Yeah, okay, I'll be around. If you guys want to continue asking each other some of the questions on the tables, feel free. If you want to ask me questions one-on-one, I'll be here. Thank you.